Hi, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed learning about farm life in Indiana and how our cities really continued to grow after the Civil War and how things really were prospering in the state of Indiana. And as you know, we learned about the Oliver brothers who were developing the plow to make farm life easier, and also the reaper. Remember, the reaper was kind of like the combine of the late 1800s where it bundled grain. And so farming became a little bit easier because of the Oliver brothers and the machinery that they were making, and they resided in South Bend, Indiana. And then we also have another family, the Studebakers. And as you know, they first designed the Conestoga wagon, and then after the wagon, sorry, that's my kitty, and then after the wagon, they started developing and making the Studebaker car. And so now we're going to start looking at how Indiana was really prospering after the Civil War. And now we're into, again, the late 1800s, and we're starting to talk about the early 1900s. So go ahead, sit back, relax, just listen to me read for about 5 minutes or so. Railroads moved goods and people. The growth of railroads helps promote industry. Railroads and the new manufacturing companies held great power, which are your factories. Farmers who felt that the railroads were too powerful began to fight against that power. Workers formed groups to try to protect their rights. In some cases, the state government stepped in to try to control the power of these companies. The first railroad in Indiana ran from Madison, which I showed you on the map last e-learning day, or Monday's e-learning day. Madison is a city, not a very large city, but it's on southeastern Indiana, and it's over on the Ohio River, almost on the Indiana-Ohio border. So it's on the Ohio River. And so the first railroad in Indiana ran from Madison to Indianapolis. It was completed in 1847. In time, other rail lines were built. The earliest lines connected inland areas to the Ohio River. By 1854, 18 railroad companies had laid more than 1,400 miles of track in Indiana. Meanwhile, huge railroad companies were forming outside the state. Soon, these national companies bought the Indiana Railroad Companies. Railroads helped boost the state's economy. They made it easier and cheaper to ship goods. The rail lines also connected Hoosiers with the rest of the nation. And I do want to show you on this map. So here is Madison. Okay. On the Kentucky, Ohio, on the Ohio River with Kentucky and Ohio, the neighboring states. And then here's Indianapolis. Okay. So let's keep reading about some railroads. Local railways linked farmers and rural is your country, your farm life, businesses to major rail lines and markets. One railroad company usually controlled all of these local railways. That company could raise its prices because the farmers needed its services. Many farmers complained that the high rates were discriminatory. A discriminatory action aims to help one group and hurt another. Discrimination. Farmers use the grange. Remember what the grange is? We talked about the grange back a few weeks ago. And the grange is a group of farmers that would get together. They would talk about new technology or better ways. They would work together and find better ways to make farming easier. And they were just a group that just supported one another. So farmers used the grange to push for changes in railroad rates. In 1905, the state set up the Indiana Railroad Commission. This government agency had the power to set shipping prices and make sure they were fair. Meanwhile, manufacturing, which is your factories, was becoming a bigger part of the state's economy than farming. Some factory workers enjoyed better lives, yet many others suffered working 7 days a week for 12 hours a day. The work was often unsafe. Pay was often very low as well. Faced by poor working conditions, workers began to come together. They formed groups called unions. Union members demanded better working conditions. They wanted shorter work days and better pay. Sometimes they had to strike. This means to stop work in order to get better working conditions. In 1877, a major strike stopped trains in Indiana and across the nation. Unions slowly won improved conditions for their members, which that's a good thing. The United States Mine Workers Union was the largest workers group in the state. In 1898, this union won an 8-hour workday for its workers. Unions also helped push for changes in labor laws. Labor is working, using your time, your talent, and you're at a job working. Child labor, or hiring children to work in factories, was a big target. Many children suffered under harsh working conditions. In 1897, the state government passed an important law. It banned, no longer allowing, banned hiring any children under 14. So that would be you. The law also stated that children under 16 could not work more than 10 hours a day. In 1897, the state government passed another law affecting children. This law required all children between the ages of 8 and 14, so 8 through 14, to go to school at least part of the year. The Hoosier poet, James Whitcomb Riley, wrote a poem about Indiana schools in the 1800s. In 1900, the state made the school year longer. Because children spent more time in the classroom, they learned more. Schools in the southern area were generally not as good as those in the center and north, though. Many of the towns in the southern part of the state were poor. In the early 1900s, the state government tried to fix this problem. It began giving more money to poorer schools. The growth of railroads and industry, which is manufacturing, which is your factories, brought changes to Indiana. Farmers said that the railroads were unfair because of their shipping prices. Workers complained that the conditions in the new factories were harsh. A new law limited unfair pricing by railroads. Laws also banned hiring children to work in factories. The state improved education too. So as you can see, boys and girls, we are in the beginning of the 1900s, and there's a lot of changes happening to our state. So as we keep learning about these changes, go ahead and continue to work through Newsela. If you have any that are not finished, keep working those. If there's a problem or you want me to reset any Newsela, please reach out to me and I can reset those. Okay, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed learning about the railroads in Indiana.